Hello. This is a podcast about metal music that originally had a name. We found out that name was not only taken, but used by a member of a famous progressive rock band. And it's not Rush. Which is a damn shame, actually, now that I think about it, that it's not Rush.
But we found a better one.
We did find a better one. Brendan, what's our new name?
Well, I like to think we are now going to be calling ourselves Airborne Sealife.
It's a great original name that is totally not a reference to anything.
It's
Right,
legally
Manuel?
distinct.
It is legally distinct, and it's totally not gimmicking or referencing anything. Right, Manuel?
We would never do that.
No, especially to the French.
Yeah,
That'd
no.
be bad.
So
Looking at
let's
you,
get
Mario
rolling.
DePontier. Let's get rolling. All right, so we tackled Earthside on our last episode, which you know what, that song's been stuck in my head for like the couple weeks now since we've done it, and man, it's a great tune. But we figured we'd do something a little different this week, something still on the ethereal side, I guess, but
little
something
shorter,
that
though.
has caught Manuel and I's attention for the last year now. This album came out last year, right?
I think so.
Yeah, Heavener came out in 2023. So we're
Yeah.
tackling the band Invent Animate, who I found out are from Texas. I had no idea. They've been around for a while. They're really, really cool. I've checked out some of their older stuff. And one single in particular from their new record, Heavener, which came out, again, March of last year, 2023. Man, it's 2024. Weird. Has caught our attention and caught the masses in the metal world. And it's this single here, Without a Whisper. And yeah, we're going to be discussing it. We're going to have some fun about it. And let's get underway.
Rip it away.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, I love that. That intro is it's very simple and not at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got it's a very like harmonically it's very simple and it fits into like pretty solid boxes, but the rhythm's just a little bit wonky and you have that tapping line over top of it.
Mm-hmm. What I really like about that, though, is when you're thinking about it, because it's in everyone's favorite time signature. 11/8. No, it's in 4. Because if you're thinking about it, right, you're going. That tapping lick is so cool because it's just 16th notes, right?
Yeah.
It's just groupings of 3 essentially. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, which is always fun when you mess around with 16th notes and groupings like that, or even groupings of 5. But then what's happening underneath is what I really appreciate about the intro, where it's just simple syncopated stuff, but there's so much raw energy to it that I think is what really gives it more of that oomph, rather than just like what's actually happening like note wise. You know what I mean?
The note wise, it's just kind of a classic of kind of lament style chord progressions. It's just sadness in a box.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of this is meant to serve like a greater package, because when you really look at the video too, everything is like very monochromatic. It's all white and it's all like very distinctive. And I think the overall vibe of this particular song is meant to evoke a very powerful feeling of loss. At least that's the interpretation I've taken away from it. And
there's a lot of like floral.
I believe
as well.
I can't remember, and I wish we brought this, or I wish we did a little more backstory investigating with Earthside when we did that. But I know, if I remember correctly, the lyrics and everything for this song were written, I think, after the passing of their guitarist's grandmother, I believe it was.
I believe so. I don't remember exactly.
It was after the passing of somebody, but yeah.
Yeah. Which, like, a lot of music's written that way.
Well, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of great music. There's some Periphery stuff that's written that way that's some of their best work.
Yeah. Dayseeker, that like progressive metal, like techno band. that's been like breaking out too. They got some stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway, depressing stuff aside, shall we continue?
Let's
Yep.
continue.
So we're gonna get to this really cool, like, kind of abrupt shift in tone that I really like.
Are you going away to the place we used to dream of? Radiance and grace, the only ones like you. I know I've been there before with you. Now you're fading from me, fading from me.
I guess shift in tone is the wrong word because it never like strays from that lamentation idea. It's just it keeps it's variations on a theme in a way. It keeps taking the feeling and then doing different things with it in the music.
Yeah.
I think for me, the way to look at it is that you're seeing a continuation of the overall feeling. Like the way I'm interpreting it is that it's those feelings of sadness that are like leaking through, like because it comes up a very kind of, I don't know if I want to say heavy, but like kind of a consistently aggressive tone, and
I
you're
th-
trickling in the
Yeah.
emotions of
I
it.
think
And
aggressive is a good word.
if you look even more carefully, they have a very it's not necessarily monochromatic because you see a lot of the white and the green of like the florals of things that would be arranged, but you're also seeing a lot of their instruments and a lot of like the urns are all black. It's a I think a bit of a subtle nod because even their guitar straps and guitars are black. The everything
drums
is
are black, yeah.
The urns are black. There's a subtle indication that there is a little bit more going on beneath the surface. At least, look, I might be overthinking all these visuals a little bit. That's my whole deal. I'm going to overthink things until I'm dead. But I'm thinking, like, especially when you go back to what you said about this being written around when the guitarist player's grandmother passed away. There's clearly, and especially when you watch the video later, you go into, I think we've even seen it already. There's liquid and water being drained onto the flowers. I mean, that's clearly evocative of tears, man. It's like the entire world in the video is weeping to this loss.
And at the same time, it's not like there's songs on this album that are just pure rage, and they feel like completely out of control. There's a moment later that kind of gets towards that, but it's none of it's still kind of contained. It's a little more subdued, even though it's got this those nasty guitar lines and stuff like that. It's not. It doesn't feel angry to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think angry definitely not angry in the sense that there's how do I put this actually? I'm trying to think. There's an anger of almost like guilt in a way.
I would say overwhelming,
Yeah,
overpowering.
overwhelming
would be the right
is I
word.
think we're the right word
Mhm.
here. Because I think
Because sadness can be overpowering.
Yeah.
Grief is overpowering.
yeah, and I think that's where what we've discussed this with Earthside, and then when we looked at War of Being, and the last time we did this, or previous time before that, this whole idea of peaks and valleys with how a song can flow, and we're sort of feeling that here, but with not so much with how the song is, but with like that emotional context of like what's
Yeah.
really going on with the song. These peaks and valleys of these ideas of sort of like the 5 stages of grief kind of thing.
Sure.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think we would probably have to look at this in the context of the entire album. Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
was the album itself written with the idea in mind of this grief, or is this just one-off instance of that particular flavor of grief?
I can't really say. I'm looking. I'm trying to find. Yeah, he did write it about his grandmother.
Okay.
But I'm struggling to find any interviews about the album as a whole. or like
I
just,
haven't
that aren't
found a lot
purchased Halo
as far
BD
as
thing.
like all of Heavener, but yeah.
Well, I think we're past that point where we're like interpreting it based on the facts, and I think we should take the
Yeah.
song as
As it is, yeah.
exactly as it is, because this is a song that's clearly meant to evoke something where when you lose a loved one, you're in this constant state of emotion, and this is that constant torrent, and that underlying, the vocals are the underlying pang of sadness to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the vocals and go over this constant overwhelming sense of emotion. But why don't we let's keep the music going and get more of that sensation.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's roll it back to. There's actually a really cool little synth line in the background. Oh no, that's guitar. I never noticed. Yeah, this kind of like there's a bit of a I don't know if it's a dirty secret, but the way pop and pop adjacent music does dynamics is completely different from the way more traditional styles of music do dynamics, where like an orchestra can actually get loud and quiet. The way pop music is produced, the way you do dynamics is by adding things or taking things away, which they're doing an excellent job of. They're playing with how many layers of things are there, how many like how much of the spectrum is being filled when you pour distorted guitars over something. It takes up all of the room in the audio spectrum. It'll like fill every crack you don't have another instrument in. So when you take that away, it suddenly feels quieter, even though it kind of isn't.
Right.
I think the entirety of this, and I think that's a good way to take it. Like, there is a subtraction here. And I think in a word that I would use to describe the consistency of it, it would be tumultive. Because when you really look at the visuals as well, like you're seeing things that are flowing backwards, or elements of this where it's like things are flying around. It's subtle, but it's there, because I think I can't get past the idea that this is definitely a song written decidedly in grief. You can really feel the energy of being absolutely destroyed. I think
Yeah, there's a moment, a vocal moment towards the end of the song that is that like the essence of that.
Yeah.
I think compositionally, this had to be something where you needed to take things away. Playing what's not there had to be a core element of this song, or it would not really be delivering the same way. And that really speaks to the technical excellence of this freaking band, man. I'm of the things we've done so far, this is one of the more powerful ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they're really cool.
Sure. The only thing I can really put some input in right now is it's interesting to see how much of a tonal shift, and by tonal I don't mean like note wise, I just mean like overall shift there is from the chorus into the next verse. Just you take away all these things and it's all this space, and you're sort of sitting there realizing like, oh, where'd all this come from? What do I do now? The other thing I also want to mention, this is something I thought was hilarious, was I was playing this one day in the car. I was driving home from somewhere with some friends, and had this blasting, and a friend of mine was listening, and heard the pre-chorus into the just almost into the chorus, and just kind of looked at me, and he was like, "Is this a new Linkin Park single?" And I looked back and I go, "No, no, it is not."
That's a rolled up newspaper moment if I ever heard one.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, he doesn't listen to this kind of stuff on
I mean,
occasion.
I know,
But I
still.
get where he was kind of coming from with the vibe of where the pre-chorus goes and with the chorus, just that like it's very somber and there's just like this moment of like aggression. I get it. However, no, keep playing the video.
Yeah, okay, but
Yeah, no, but if I can talk about like compositional technique for a second, I actually thought there was a synthesizer in that first like quiet section.
Mhm.
Turns out that it's a guitar, and the clean guitars just have this really kind of back of the throat
Yeah,
mid-range
yeah,
to them.
yeah.
I thought it was a
But that's
synth man.
yeah, but it's really hard to separate from the other guitar line. There's a couple guitar lines happening at the same time, and it's counterpoint. And
Yeah.
like I think a lot of people think of counterpoint as like that thing that Bach did, and that we don't have to worry about anymore because it's hard. But everything is counterpoint, and anytime you have like there's techniques to it, but when you have multiple lines happening at the same time that are kind of interwoven with each other, they become more than they were individually. Let's keep rolling. That
I love that part
layer in the
so
vocals
much.
is so
Very
pretty.
nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I will say something I enjoy about that that second verse going into the chorus of the song, and kind of in the same lines of what I was talking about with Earthside when we were looking at that, was is how the drums change up in a way that adds so much more, but in the most subtle way possible. So with the drums, right? There's nothing going on for that first half of the verse, first half of the second verse, that is,
Mhm.
and then it comes back in with this very simple halftime groove of just doom, da, doom, doom, da, doom, right, and that, and then the second half of that verse, not even second half, I think it's just the last four bars of that verse before the pre-chorus, is when it switches to just a regular 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2. Just like that simple change up gives so much of a direction change to like, okay, this is where we're going right now with it. Like it really ramps up the feeling of as it's like leading to the next point.
Yeah, and also switching from something a little less stable to something simple and clear, like really gives you a sense of like, okay, we're moving now.
I'm also noticing, and I realized something in the middle of like watching this, because like I've watched through this a couple of times already, and I'm noticing because it's always easy to get lost in the weeds of like the technical aspects, but the music video always has a story to tell, whether or not it's a coherent one. And I'm noticing from the visuals of this, if you watch in the beginning all the way through, you're actually going to see there's parts of it where like it's not just that there are things flying around, it's framed in such a way where it's almost like all the video footage. And periodically, as the song progresses, you're noticing that it gets less and less structured in a way where it's almost deteriorating. What if the
Mhm.
song in itself is not just the audio to losing a loved one, but losing the memory of a loved one over time, the loss of your memories to that person. And then it becomes a much more abstracted idea of loss. And it's like, this is genius, the way that they're portraying this very specific, because we all have loved ones where I'm sure they died a long time ago, and you might not even remember what that person looks like anymore. And that's a really powerful realization that, oh shit, I don't remember Mima's voice anymore. I don't remember what she sounds like. And that's a very abrupt, very powerful form of loss that no one ever really predicts. Like, everyone knows that we're all going to die. That's just inevitable. I mean, like I know we're having fun now that we're all going to talk about how we're going to die. Now it's really lighthearted. And but what we don't realize that unless we have very specific recordings and very specific records that we kept, we're going to be forgotten in a very profound way by long down the road generations. And that's really heavy.
Yeah.
And I think the song, in a very subtle way, captures that at least audible sensation and visual representation for me very profoundly.
Hmm. I think the also just the sepia tone that they have over everything helps with the old photo feel of the
And
video.
it's the way we're talking about it, how it's structured based upon what's not there. Because when we die, there's nothing left but space. Or like when someone we love dies, when you go to their house, there's nothing but space. There's
Yeah.
the implication of like what you remember about that place and the emotional energy you charge into it. But literally, it's over this overwhelming presence of space. And I think that purposeful composition, including that idea, that's genius in a way that I had not previously considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the breakdown I was talking about earlier.
There's something so powerful about that moment where it's just Marcus for that one bar screaming,
Yeah.
and the way it just goes after that. You're like, oh, like I'll never. I wish I could listen to this again for the first time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
I
like
feel
I
that.
remember when I sent this to you a year ago
yeah.
and told you to listen to it.
I think my reaction was, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there it is again. You know, you take things away, and that's I've talked about it a couple of times that sometimes the thing that makes something more powerful is it being alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's again why Meshuggah is so heavy, where a lot of the bands that imitate Meshuggah are less heavy because a lot of those bands put extra stuff on top of the Meshuggah, and Meshuggah
Yeah.
knows that's fine. They're doing it because they want to put extra stuff, and I think they know it's not as heavy. But the reason Meshuggah is so heavy is because they don't have all that stuff taking your attention away and taking up, sonic real estate.
Mm-hmm.
It's just guitar, bass, drums, smack you in the face with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's an episode of the Boondocks. Look, I know this is a completely different direction, but bear with me.
Hey, I'm all for a Boondocks reference.
No, it's not just a reference. There's an episode, I think it's one of the Stinkmeaner episodes where
Okay.
Granddad is getting ready for a fight. So Huey is he's getting ready to teach Granddad, and he's punching trees, doing kung fu. But while he's watching it, he's doing the movements and everything. But the one takeaway that he threw at it was, you lack emotional content. He was doing the moves, but it lacked the power of the energy behind it, the emotion. And I think that you can have a lot of bands that try to capture something, like they emulate the progressions of scales and things, but if you lack the emotional content, the emotional punch, the meaning behind why the song was heavy in the way that it was, it's just going to be a pale imitation. It's never going to be the same. And I think you could give this song, this specific one right here before us, to any other artist, but without the experience behind it, it's just not going to be the same. I mean, just looking at the way this particular breakdown, it's not just it's not just a breakdown, because especially watching the video, you see that he is consistent, but the band members around him have different editings around it. He's raging against a deterioration of memory. He's raging against this constant swelling of emotion, this constant loss of sensation around that person. And that is that scream we all feel in grief, where it's like, I can't take it anymore. And you literally just have to flip the first thing that's in front of you and rage against it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fun. All right. If we can pull this back to here.
I love that part so much. That might actually be my favorite part of this whole song.
It
That
is the best
one,
part.
that moment might be my favorite part of this whole song.
Because he also kind of scoops into that first U.
Yeah.
A little bit of
yeah.
fry.
There's that little bit of processing on the "you're fading from me" part before it kicks back in that I find so interesting that they added in there. That it's kind of like Fritzy almost.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
like
it just goes.
like a Big Crush lo-fi.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
thing.
it's a big crush of some kind, and then it just kicks right in, like holy shit! Like Manuel and I joked about this some time ago when we did like a test run for this podcast where we were talking about Sleep Token, and it's the same thing where like these vocals come in out of nowhere, and you're kind of just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Where'd that come from? And like, yeah,
go on.
No, and it's one of those things that I always appreciate, especially more and more. I've been really getting into like studying metal vocalists and the way they perform, the way they like enunciate vowels, and like all those little details that singers do. And I've seen some live recordings of Invent Animate doing this song, and I saw them last year when they were on their like mini tour. But it's funny because Marcus could never hit that high part for like the longest time, and I understand why.
It's a high note.
It's high for a dude. That is high, and the fact that he's able to get to be fair, there's obviously a studio recording, so maybe it was done in a couple takes. Who knows, right? But just to be able to get to those, just that up and down of his vocal range to get everything going is like, oh, it's so pretty in the most fucking weird way. It's so pretty.
Yeah, no, we should talk sometime about "I the Destroyer" by Monuments.
By Monuments, yeah.
When Chris Barretto hits that high, I think it's an F sharp,
something like that, yeah,
and just hangs on to it for a second.
But yeah,
But
this brief moment of this song is so it's awe-inspiring in the wildest way because it just kicks the door open basically.
it's so, I mean, it's not technique wise, nothing special is
No,
happening. Yeah,
not
he
at
hits a
all.
really high note, we should also talk about Haken at some point because they're kind of like this too, where Ross is not like
Mhm.
he's not really that special, but it's so solidly performed every single time,
Yeah.
which is impressive in and of itself. And he puts so much emotion into those that 2 seconds of music.
Yeah, it's definitely nothing like to write home about technique wise, but just like the moment itself, you sort of sit there and when you have that hit you, you're just kind of like, whoa.
I think it hits because it is a situation where you're looking at a sum of its parts situation. It hits as hard as it does because it's so perfectly tailored into the situation and where you're experiencing it
Hmm.
that it absolutely just there is just inescapable. It's just it's like when you really look at like the 5 stages of grief, they happen in the order that they do because they're supposed to. And this is tailored in such a way where it's supposed to hit you at this point. This song is peaks and valleys of highs and lows. And it's just if it were not built the way that it was, if this was not so expertly put together with an idea of subtraction, I don't think it would hit nearly as well. I mean, it's like you said, this is not something where it's like vocal rocket science, but because of the way that it's structured, it hits so much harder because it's that moment hitting
Yeah.
out of left field in a
Yeah.
way where I don't want to say it almost doesn't fit, which is why it works so well.
I feel like
Actually, I mean, this is more about structure than anything else, but you will find this as you start listening to music. Well, once you know about it, uh, where does the breakdown start? Yeah. So the breakdown starts at about 2/3 of the way in. If you a lot of music, um, something different will happen at or around the golden ratio of the runtime of the song, which is roughly 2/3 of the way in.
mhm.
Every Bach piece, about 2/3 of the way in, he does something weird. A lot of the time, the bridge in pop music is about 2/3 of the way in. So we get through this kind of perfectly placed breakdown, and then it's almost like that breakdown earns that moment because there's a moment of peace and then something has to happen that calls back to the beginning, but you can't really go back to that after that breakdown.
Yeah.
I would argue going through the emotions that you go through in the song, there is no going back.
No.
I think that's the
No.
point. It's almost like someone
Which, I mean,
custom
it's
tailored the experience to represent what they were feeling.
right. So
Ooh.
imagine that
No.
artists
Yeah,
making
imagine
art
that.
based on their experiences.
Imagine
People do that
Uh,
these days. That's
That's
dumb.
something.
Yeah.
but like practically, it's the same music as the beginning. It's just he with his voice has made it feel different,
Right. Yeah.
which is awesome.
That is awesome. Like,
It,
I think awesome is just the overall description of like the entirety of this piece.
yeah. I think it's also too where on the topic going back for a second on it's not vocal rocket science, but the moment itself is just really something. It's like Manny probably feels the same way, maybe. But I've definitely like learned to shut my brain off when I listen to music and not think about technique or not think about like theory or anything like that when I listen to songs now, because I just kind of want to enjoy them for what they are as a whole, like the sum of all things. And that's when I start to appreciate what's going on more. Like I'll listen to something and like I'll have a friend of mine who he'll try to like poke the nerd out of me and be like, "Oh, this sounds cool. This sounds cool." I'm like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking that sounds fucking cool in general. Like I'm not
That's
freaking out about it being like, "Whoa, it's this." No, I don't care. It's just it sounds really sick. Like it's all it is.
I mean, I think you got to take away the fact that, like, when you keep listening to music like it's musical Legos, it's like, aha, this arpeggio is sublime, ha ha ha. And it's
Yeah.
like, no one wants to listen to music with that guy. I
No.
think, especially for me, when I listen to something, I like to just kind of lay on the bed or like on a couch and like close my eyes and like see where it takes my brain, see
Mhm.
in my brain like the production that it puts on
Yeah.
with the extrapolation and abstraction of that music.
That is a legit. I had so many. Well, not so many. I had a couple of professors who told me like, yeah, I don't really listen to music anymore because I don't hear it uh, as music. I hear it as like a pile of information.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
I'm
I mean, I
musically
never
stupid.
really. Yeah. I never really had that problem, but I think it's important not to lose sight. I mean, being trained is awesome. I'm never gonna, I'm not one of those people who's like, I don't learn music theory because it'll make your music suck. Uh, but never losing sight of the fact that someone listening to this is just listening to a song
Mhm.
is super important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just at the end of the day, we're all listening to the same thing, whether or not you're musically trained or not. And I think that's the best part about it is that you can have conversations with people that aren't, and still have meaningful conversations, much like what we do here.
Exactly.
Brendan's not musically trained. I'm not
I'm
musically
musically
trained.
stupid. I just like music.
I play drums. That doesn't count apparently. So, yeah, it's shit like that. Let's finish this off, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we
Oh.
got most.
We got
No, I
most of
think
it
we got the
done.
whole thing
Yeah, I
done
think
for
we
the
got
most
the whole
part.
thing. Just finish her. Just finish her off.
All right.
Yeah, we finished it. We
Yeah,
were already
Yeah.
done.
it's. I love that ending because it's nothing bombastic. You know what I mean?
It's just a cymbal ringing out.
Yeah, it's just a cymbal ringing
and
out. There's some delay there, some reverb.
There's all that reverb wash
Yeah.
from the
Well,
guitars.
what
and
I
it's
mean
just,
though is like
yeah.
leading up to that moment is just there isn't anything direction changing in the end because a lot of the one thing I realized about a lot of I'll say like metalcore and some other bands in that like subgenre or like the adjacent subgenres, um, they like taking what I call the Alfred Hitchcock approach to an ending where there's some sort of suspense and you're kind of like, huh? But it's not suspense like it makes you wait for it. It's suspense like it just completely changes the direction and then you're like,
There is actually a word for that. I read a paper about it not too long ago. It's called terminally climactic form, and it is a technique that I really like,
okay,
but it is very heavily used. A lot of my music does this,
Yeah.
where it's the climax is the end of the piece instead of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Which can be super cool, and it does kind of fit with the ethos of metal because a lot of metal, once you hit the big moment, there's kind of nowhere left to go.
Yeah.
But this doesn't do that. This is more traditional song form. There's the breakdown in the middle. Actually, the ending, they go back to the breakdown, which is interesting.
They do, it's the breakdown. I think is when you think about it, the common theme of the entire song because it happens on more than 2 occasions actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
which
way-
is yeah.
The way I'm going to look at it, like, I'm going to go ahead and say, like, if less is more, I'm going to say that loss is more because, especially like this whole song is evocative of loss. It's not. We've already beaten that into the ground, but I think that the whole point of the song is that when you lose something, it leaves you full of things you didn't ask for or expect. And I think the whole point of it ending on that symbol, the ending on that very simplistic thing, is it's that perfect kind of bookend of the sensation that there's things that are left unsaid. There are things that are missing. There are things that you wish you could be doing, or things that you also just could be doing right now with the
Yeah.
person or thing that you've lost, but you're left with just that thing. I think it's perfect because it forces you to fill in the blanks of what could be there. I think that's the best way I'm taking from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way the music is structured is very indicative of that, right? So, yeah.
It's fairly simple but very effective.
Oh yeah.
A
Incredibly.
real fill in the blanks of music.
Yeah. And what's nice is it's also so far the shortest song we've done on this podcast.
Yeah, and I think this might shape up to be the shortest episode we've done.
Yeah, at 4 minutes. We should
So we'll
do
get
stuff.
back to the 11-minute songs next time.
The question is, we can use this moment to give final thoughts and yeah, just talk about I don't know. How do I put this? Invent Animate. This is going to be my final thought. This album came out at a time where I think metal was making a renaissance. Because you had Heavener come out in March of last year. I think Dayseeker's most recent album came out in around the same time of 2023, if not late 2022. And that was the whole, synth heavy metalcore kind of thing that not tonally similar to what Heavener was, but like in that same light, very similar. And so there were these different subgenres of metal coming up and really hitting like a mainstream point. And then, freaking, I've mentioned this band a million times and I love them, and we all know that's like the least kept secret here. And then Sleep Token released their fucking Bohemian Rhapsody of an album in May of last year, and those three bands, including some other new stuff that came out last year, really started to take over the like mainstream metal world on YouTube, on Spotify, everything. Because this was all showing up at a time where, and Manuel and I can definitely attest to this. The last few years have definitely been taken over by the genty gent movement.
The gentleman.
Yeah, I mean that's been since about 2015. That's been the thing, and that kind of morphed into this sort of genty metalcore, because you also have what's the English band, the English metalcore band?
Which one? There's like 50.
Yeah, you got to narrow that way down, buddy.
Yeah,
English metalcore. That could be any of them.
Architects.
Oh yeah, okay.
Architects.
Yeah.
They do this kind of thing. A lot of metalcore now has that sort of syncopated riffing, and then really pretty vocals.
Yeah. Really pretty production too.
Yeah. Well,
like it's not as I think I talked to you about this past weekend when we were at MAG, but I talked to Mike about it. Mike, a friend of ours who is the main guitar player and songwriter for Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Plug.
Plug.
Get that shameless plug in there somehow. But, we were talking about how, like, you listen to the production on, like, the OG metalcore stuff, like the 2000s metalcore, like the New England era, and how, like, just raw it was. Just unbelievably just heavy and raw. And you compare that to what metalcore is now with the production. It's polished up so much in, I think, a good way. And a lot of that
depends on what you like.
Yeah,
I know some people complain about the level of polish in a lot of modern production. I don't mind it. I think the job of a producer is to be not noticed.
Yep.
If you haven't, if you've done your job right, people think you haven't done anything at all.
Exactly.
But I know a lot of people do miss that sort of not perfect, raw, nasty. That's one of the reasons why black metal is so enduring, because it sounds bad.
Yeah. No, seriously,
and
he's
I
right.
know,
People
it's
really
just
like that
Like,
sound.
as someone
it's
that,
such a good description of it, and
yeah,
it's just like it's
like,
so good because it's awful, and it's like the most accurate descriptor. If it doesn't sound like it was recorded in a tin can with like a string into like an amplifier in someone's
Yeah.
basement in Denmark, then who
where
cares?
where the hell were we? We were in like Montreal or something years ago, and Emperor was in town. It was their first show in Canada in like 20 years or something. And like, I love me some Emperor. I love me some occasional black metal, right? Like them and like Behemoth and things like that. But so I went to go see Emperor, and I took my dad. And 2 minutes in to their entire set, my dad just looks over at me and goes, "I don't get it." I go, "That's the point. That is entirely the point." He's like, "It sounds like screeching." I go, "Yes, it does."
And like that's the point.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
you know.
this was mixed by the same guy who mixed a lot of the Spirit Box stuff.
Oh, really? That
Yeah,
that checks out, actually. That checks out.
yeah, it does.
Because the Spirit Box stuff is totally similar to what Invent Animate is doing now. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, actually, we should.
that's some really wild stuff, especially the fact that Spirit Box kind of just came out of the gate kicking.
Well, they've been doing. I'd actually heard about them like way before Eternal Blue came out. They've been doing, but it's a great example of the like it takes 10 years to actually like do anything.
Yeah.
They definitely because they were in what was it? I Wrestled Bear once,
Yeah, Courtney LaPlante
and then they left
their guitar player
that.
was in I Wrestled a Bear once. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'd been making singles for years until like the pandemic happened, and they started putting out singles every month or two,
Yeah.
and then they got huge with Eternal Blue.
Yeah. And
You
then
know,
they did the wildest thing by going on tour with random bands, such as
Such as
Limp Bizkit. Which
I
I
knew it
think
was
is
coming
still
Didn't they go on
I
tour?
know it was going to happen eventually, which I think is like one of the wildest things that. Yeah, what better way to
Didn't
get
they go on
yourself
tour
out there
with
than
Shinedown too?
I think they are currently, or they have already gone on tour with Shinedown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But yeah, like
that's almost as weird as Meshuggah going opening for Megadeth.
That's very
oh
weird.
yeah, yeah. That
It was
is
a
kinda weird.
it was a show.
It was a show.
It was a good show.
Yeah.
But Megadeth kind of didn't need to play after Meshuggah.
No. Things
It
like
just seems
that.
irrelevant at that point.
Oh yeah. Even things like like going back to the topic on hand with Invent Animate. They are currently on tour with Beartooth, I believe, who I
Okay.
thought stopped being a band, but apparently is still a band. No offense, sorry Beartooth, if for whatever reason you find this. But yeah,
We still want to
like,
be friends.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, like it's fun when bands go on tour and they'll get on like the most random bill of like other artists. At least this one kind of makes sense with Beartooth, but yeah, I mean I think and then last year I think it was they were on tour with Era. And Era is another one of those bands that are like sonically similar to like Spirit Box and Invent. So no.
Yeah, Era's really cool.
Era
just
is definitely
the way
really cool.
they do certain things. We should also do them at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands we have discussed about like stuff we want to do, which we'll tackle one of these days. But yeah, final thoughts, gentlemen, as we wrap this up.
Good song. I think we should also do some videos about some of the unsung heroes, like the mixing guy.
Yeah.
Because like it's almost important to have a good mixing guy as it is to have like a band recording, because their mix is going to be different from someone else's mix, and it could be cool to like find that imprint in other songs.
Yeah, I mean we could. The guy is it's Daniel Bronstein.
Oh, okay.
Bronstein, whatever.
Yeah.
But his mixes are super clean, super pretty. But he does a lot of this kind of stuff now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great song. It's short, simple. It's a good lesson in how to not do too much and still make it sound awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's plug our stuff. Yusuf and I are in the aforementioned Necronomicon Ex Mortis, coming soon to
Yeah, we're.
back of a Wendy's near you.
I don't even think we're good enough for a Wendy's. Yeah, so Manuel and I, of course, play guitar and bass respectively in a death metal band called Necronomicon Ex Mortis. We have 2 EPs out right now. We have our self-titled, which was released in 2023, I believe, and then
I think everything was 23.
I think
so
both
far.
were right. Yeah. And then our second EP, which is entitled Silver Bullet, which was also released in the summer of 2023. Actually, it might have been September. I don't remember. Anyway,
It
regardless.
shows you how much we pay attention.
All I know is we have 2 EPs currently on Spotify, on YouTube, Bandcamp, wherever else you get your music, any streaming services like that. Our music is available to download at bandcamp.com/Necronomicon Mortis. You can find us there. We're on Instagram. You can give us a follow for this podcast. This is on my personal channel, Yusuf Rashid, and it'll eventually be on Spotify under Airborne Sealife once I get that done, because I should probably get that done. Big thank you
I
to
already
Brendan
gave
for
you the logo.
Oh yeah, big thank you to
Yep.
Brendan for making the logo. It looks hilarious, and I'm very glad we have it. Because who doesn't love a Kraken? We all love,
We love
a good
a Kraken.
We all love a
We
good
do.
Kraken.
We do love- we do
As
love
far as any
tentacles.
other plugs that we gotta do, that full
You
length
can
isn't.
find
Yeah,
well, you can find me on some, though not all, of the social medias at A String Alchemy, and you can find my music on it should be all of the streaming platforms and on Bandcamp under my name, Manuel Barbara. It's metal.
it is metal. You can find me here on my channel at Yusuf Rashid. My Instagram at yus.rashid. It's different. There's no uff. That's so stupid. Other things like that. Or hey, if you happen, for whatever reason, to be in the video game music scene, you might have seen me there. So you can see all the weird shit I collab on in the video game world. Is that all? Are we good here?
I'd plug my stuff, but you're already watching it, so I
Exactly.
did something right.
Alrighty. I guess with that being said, this has been the episode of Airborne Sealife covering Invent Animate, and we'll be back with, who knows? It'll be a surprise. We're never going to announce what we're doing in advance. We're just going to figure it out later.
We will.
Like most
And
prog
you'll be
musicians
there.
do. Exactly. On that note, goodbye. All right.